Welcome to Rhyme and Reason, hosted by Dr. Barry. Today, Barry welcomes addiction professional Russell Levine. And now, here's Dr. Barry Ryman.
Welcome to episode number 15. Episode 15, I can't believe it's been 15 weeks of this show, which we do weekly every Wednesday from noon until 1 p.m. Eastern. We try to bring you a variety of guests, a variety of topics to try to keep it interesting and just some really good conversation. It is, and I would be remiss if I did not mention last week's guest, Allie Kessler, and the feedback we got regarding, her story and the tragedy that occurred in her life. So I just want to thank Allie again for coming on last week and sharing with us. She touched a lot of our viewers. This week's guest, I'm actually very excited about. And I had asked him probably about a month and a half ago to come on. And his immediate response was yes. And then it's like, but when? And so we had trouble coordinating. I had one guest pull out, one pull in, one who had to move weeks. So Russell has been very flexible. He is an avid motorcycle rider, and I learned something new about Russell today, which is his age. I didn't realize he was as old as dirt. So Russell, when you can come on, you can yell at me for making that statement. But in all reality, you really look like you're, I would say, around my age in your mid 40s. So, but let me tell you a little bit about the man, the myth, the legend in his mind and in my mind. Russell is the Director of Business Development at Archstone Behavioral Health. Through his work in the addiction industry, he's been connecting individuals and their families to substance use disorder and mental health treatment services for over 17 years. Having experienced the effects of alcoholism and mental health illness in his family, he has a deep compassion for families and has been impacted by the pain and chaos that mental illness causes. On top of that, and this is where I found out that he was a little older than I thought he was. Previous to this stint in the recovery industry for the better part of 2 decades, Russell worked in the music industry for 2 decades. So if you add up 2 decades plus another 17 years, that's a 37-year career. He was older than I thought he was. But anyways, his work in the music industry eventually led him to his own recovery and discovering his passion for helping others create positive change in their own lives. He is a Florida certified, now get this, NADAAC trained interventionist. I don't think that they could have fit more letters in that description, and it would probably take me at least a week to memorize that so I could write it down. And he's honored to serve on multiple boards, committees, and task forces in the community. One of the other things that most people will say about Russell is that if you go to any industry event from the Keys all the way to Pensacola and every part in between in Florida, you are guaranteed to see Russell Levine there. He has become a fixture and a staple at any networking event, any marketing event, any seminar, any basically anything. You have Russell. So let's bring him on. Russell, how was that for an introduction?
That was darn good. I am old as dirt. I am 63.
He is 63 and a half.
Yeah, and really, the secret to networking is the food. You give us marketers food, and we will be there. It's very
I was just about to bring that up, but I didn't want to portray you as old and fat.
I'm good. Well, when I got down here, when I got to Florida in 1998, on a small cocaine problem. I weighed 158 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, my cheeks were so. That probably
And
wasn't a good look.
you're pretty tall.
Yeah. Well, I'm 6'3".
Okay,
6'3.5", and I weighed 158. So my BMI was probably ready for an eating disorder clinic.
funny enough, I'm 6'3", and I was 140 pounds soaking wet, completely and totally emaciated, having grand mal seizures in and out of hospitals. And you know what? I thought I looked good.
Well, good, exactly. The detectives in Boston would yell at me, "Hey, there goes the crackhead." I'm like, "Are they talking about me?"
We were both on the same diet. I think they call it the stem fast.
Yeah, it was. No, I ate once a week. I went to Boston Market and I had a children's meal.
Where are you from?
Boston.
Oh, you're from Boston, so that
Yeah.
just makes sense. Is that where Jimmy Magner says he's not fat, he's healthy?
Absolutely.
It's good to see Jimmy. I actually haven't seen Jimmy in a long time, but you just said the word Boston, and right away, guess who popped up on the screen?
That's
Jimmy Magner.
my guy.
Because and who knew? Did Boston Market originate in Boston?
Shockingly enough, I believe they did.
Okay, I've never connected the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was today years old when I learned that. All right, so it is a semi-tradition that I tell a dad joke when we come on air, and you are an avid motorcyclist, right? I don't know what they call that. Do they call it rider? What's the word for that?
Rider, motorcyclist. In Florida, they call it stupid because it's kind of crazy to ride down here sometimes for the people down here. But yeah, I'm a rider. I'm a biker.
Yeah. I mean, and I do have to say that. And no, Jimmy, Boston is not greater than Miami because you live here. If that was the case, you'd still be up there. Maybe the sports have been better than Miami sports, but it's warmer here. Anyways, all right. So my dad joke of the day, Russell, and this is in tribute to you and your motorcycling. What do you call a laughing motorcycle?
What do you call a laughing motorcycle? I don't know, Barry. What do you call a laughing motorcycle?
A Yamaha ha ha ha.
That was terrible. I love it. That was very good.
I made one up the other night, right? A Harley har har har.
Har har. Nice. I will tell my daughters.
Yes, but do you have granddaughters?
No, my fiance has 2 daughters, so I've lived with them for 7 years. So
okay.
So 15 and 7.
I figured by 63 and a half, you would have a harem of grandchildren.
12, 15 and 7, 15 and 12, my mind is.
Okay, all right. So they're a little too young. Yes, tell them they will enjoy the joke. I do pretty much get all my dad jokes from my 10-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So my 8-year-old throws some jokes my way too, but I have to save those for future shows. Anyways, all right. So before we break into what you're currently doing, how you help the community, because you really do, in all seriousness, and I meant this before, you are a fixture at these events and you are always there to lend a helping hand. Prior to all this, with Recovery Unplugged is centered around music. This, you've been a part of this in one form or another at some point in your life. Can you talk a little bit about your introduction to the music industry, how you got involved with that, and pretty much how that shaped you today?
Well, I got a job at WBCN in Boston, 104.1, probably one of the original great rock and roll radio stations in Boston, probably in 1974. And I have a good voice. And also, what a lot of people don't know about me is I can fluently talk backwards, like Dr. Barry Ryman, name where you're at, rock top. It's just one of those things I've done, and I can rock and roll, Northern Accord. It's just one of those things I do, and I've been able to do it since I was a kid. We used to drive up to Schenectady, the Italian cats, to see my grandparents. And so I got bored, and so I would talk backwards. And so WBCN heard about that. I was on the radio as Captain Backwards. I was on their listener line. I worked in production. Um, and that's really also where drug use, radio stations started happening. But I met a lot of rock stars that way. I met The Clash. I met Jerry Garcia. I met also, Bob Seger. Everyone that came in, they all came into the station. And I learned all about cocaine, marijuana, and how if you want to get your song on the radio, you give the DJ, lots of cocaine and money. Those were the good old days. Now, I wasn't a DJ, but I was part, I was on the listener line and I was part of it. And I did my little Captain Backwards thing on the Morning Macker show. And so I was involved in all that. So I got to meet a lot of the band and I got phone numbers of the offices. And also one of my mother's friends was also an usher at the Boston Music Hall. She was in charge of the ushers. So I got to usher at all the music hall shows. So in 1976, I ushered, at the Boston Music Hall for the Grateful Dead. And then we found out that if I just call the office, if I just call Sue Stevens and say I work for WBCN, in all the places, I get backstage passes. Well, this is great. I never had to pay. I've never paid for concerts. I've never, it's always like act as if you were. We would, Sinatra would be playing the Boston Music Hall. And I'd just walk in like I owned the place, or the Opera House. You just walk in, I was putting on electrical belts and just walking in 2 hours early with a tape deck, hidden. And I'd see concerts for free. And so I learned the ins and outs of how to get into shows for free that way.
So music has had a profound impact on your life. Is that safe to say?
Without a doubt, the memories it brings back to this day of the songs you hear, it brings you back, and the people you meet have been wonderful. And then years later, all the people we'll probably talk about later, but all the people I've known throughout my 30 years with the Grateful Dead. When I was sober after a few years, I found they'd been sober for 30 years, or they were dead. It's one or the other. But most of them have gotten sober, and it's the most wonderful thing, reconnecting with all my friends that I used to party very heavily with. And now they've been sober, like, oh, we've been waiting for you.
So we had and I want to bring this up. We had a really special person in a lot of our lives that passed away about a week and a half ago. He was our physician here at Recovery Unplugged, Dr. Alan Schwartz. And I'm pretty sure you've met him before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Big guy and big deadhead. Loved the Grateful Dead. I attended his funeral services. And at the end of the services, we all sat there as they played the Grateful Dead for a few tracks.
Yeah.
And, it immediately, for me, brought up memories. I went to see the Dead in 1994 in Orlando. Okay. And you could look this up because the news article still exists. And Bob Weir's father had passed away. There were two shows. So the night before I got there was supposed to be a show, and his father had passed away, so they canceled the show. But the second show was still on, and we went there without tickets. We just went for the party outside the Dead show, which in my opinion was almost as good as actually being at the actual show, right? Whippets and acid, and we were doing all that stuff. And the next thing you know, there's hundreds of us that are gathered at the bottom of the steps at the Orlando Arena in downtown Orlando. And there's this one guy, and now let me paint the picture. There's cops standing on the stairs in a line. And then at the bottom, there's cops on horseback. There's like 3 or 4 horses that are kind of fending the crowd away. And there was this one dude who ran out and taunted the cop on the horse and then ran back in the crowd. And then 30 seconds later, he ran out again, taunted the cop on the horse, and ran back. And this happened like 3 or 4 times. And on the 3rd or 4th time that he ran out there, all of the cops converged on this one guy. And everybody at the bottom, including myself, started making a mad dash for the door. I'm in Birkenstocks. I'm tripping on acid. I'm hopping Bob's barricades like a hurdle. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know why I'm running, but everyone was running. So I ran too. I obviously wasn't in my right mind. And we made it about 3/4 of the way up the steps. And eventually we just turned around, but a lot of people crashed the gates and got into the show. And as we're walking away, and mind you, again, we're tripping on acid. As we're walking away, all of a sudden we hear people running by us with their mouths covered. We're getting gassed. We're getting gassed. And sure enough, there were helicopters. They were dropping tear gas out of helicopters. It just hit my throat.
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience with the Grateful Dead. I know the story sounds made up, but you, as an avid Deadhead, you somehow know the story.
Mm-hmm. Did happen. The scene got way out of hand around 92, 93, and it just got no fun. That's when we can get into that story now, or when I left, but it just got to be no fun anymore. It got to be too big. And when I first started, they were playing hockey rinks and theaters, and we'd stay at the Holiday Inn. And by the time I left, it was, we were at the Four Seasons every night in the Ritz, and that was all fun and helicopters. But the outside scene, instead of like the veggie sandwiches, the nitrous got out of control. People showing up without tickets got out of control. It used to be like, a few people. And, when I first started, there was probably 150 people, 100 people going on tour, go to every show. It got into the thousands, and people were just going just to make money on the scene, or just to mess with people. And there was just like everything else, the scene got ruined, and the Grateful Dead tried to stop it, tried to say don't come in without a ticket. But and all of a sudden the parking lot got called Shakedown Street, and it used to be kind of fun, the vendors and things, but then the nitrous mafia took over, and it got to be a business. Everyone, it got to be very serious and very heavy, and it got to be no fun at all. I was like, well, I'm leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately was a part of that scene, and then it was at that show that all my friends collectively, we made a decision that it would be safer just to follow Fish and not the Dead.
Yes, and a lot of people did that.
Yes, and I was one of those people that went on a four-stop tour just in Florida: Sunrise Musical Theater, USF, Orlando, the Bandshell at Gainesville, which was awesome, and music, and this whole thing started with me talking about Dr. Schwartz. May he rest in peace. He is going to be missed. He was just one of the most amazing human beings that I've encountered, especially for a physician. Okay. And I say that because there are, and I'm going to call it out, there are a lot of physicians out there that do not have bedside manner, that literally are angry, and they're literally just doing their job and trying to get their job done. And that was not him. He was one of those guys that would spend over an hour with a client just listening to them, right? And he wasn't a psychologist or a psychiatrist. He was a general practitioner physician. So he will be missed, but every time now I think of the Grateful Dead, I think of Dr. Alan Schwartz.
Yeah, an abundance of intelligence too about addiction. He was just, you'd ask him anything and he knew, exactly, from a medical point and a personal point of, what to do.
Incredible. And, we had suffered a loss earlier in that week of somebody who had worked for us for a good 5 years, and Pat Savarino, and he worked in our admissions department. And then, so weirdly that week, that Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday morning, the police had contacted Dr. Schwartz because Pat had a prescription bottle in his house, just not a opiate, narcotic, whatever, just a random prescription bottle that had Dr. Schwartz's name on it. So Schwartz was the one who got that call about Pat, and he was really freaked out about that. And then literally the next day, he had a heart attack and passed away. So it was a rough week for those of us at Recovery Unplugged. than anybody else who knew these fine souls. All right, so you got involved intimately with the dead, or is that something I'm making up in my head?
No, intimately I knew him from the radio station, but in 1979 in Oakland, we were at a New Year's run for like 4 nights at the Hyatt, and they were playing the Oakland Auditorium. And while we were there, I remember the basketball team was playing also. So there was the basketball team, the Oakland, the Seattle,
A's, the Oakland A's.
The basketball team.
Oh, the basketball team.
The basketball team. And also, I just remember Daryl Dawkins. I remember Moses Malone. I just remember there were visiting teams. There were teams coming in, and we were just doing tons of coke. And possibly people on the basketball team were also doing tons of coke. And we'd run into each other. We're in the hallways. We're doing this at 3:00 in the morning. We're doing things, and people are coming and going in our room. And all of a sudden, it was like the night before New Year's. It was 2:00 in the morning, and we hear a pounding on the door, and it was Phil Lesh, the bass player, the dead. And he comes in. I hear there's a party going on over here. And Phil liked his Heinekens. I liked my Heinekens. I liked my Phil had, later on, years later, sobered up. And best thing, obviously, as we know, the best thing you could ever do in your life. And so we got along famously. And the next thing you know, he goes, "Oh, you guys should come to the tour the next day. Here, I'll put you on the list." And every day I was on that list. I had backstage passes. And back then, you couldn't get your tape deck in. So I knew all the tapers. So I'd get everyone's tape decks in. I'd charge them cocaine for that. I'd give the cocaine to the band. I'd keep my backstage passes going. And then every night they had a hospitality suite. So I got invited to the hospitality suite. And that's where I met the rest of the band. Jerry never went to that. Jerry had his own thing going. But then one night, and this was for years, and so probably in early 1980, one night, the worst thing happened to an alcoholic. We were at the Holiday Inn, probably in New Haven somewhere. And it was after 2:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden they ran out of beer. And I was like, wait a minute, you guys are out of beer. I turned to Bob and I said, Bob Weir, the guitarist, I said, "Bob, you're out of beer. This cannot happen. We have cocaine, but we don't have beer." And he's like, "Well, that happens, Probably
Wait, hang on.
Probably drank it all. He didn't seem to be as nervous about running out of beer than me."
You had cocaine, but did you have Reds and vitamin C as well?
Well, yes.
I mean, that's, living on Reds, vitamin C, and cocaine. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Very good. And it happened the next night. Ran out of beer. And I said, "Bob, funny thing, you guys are rock stars." I don't think they realized they were rock stars, but I did. And I said, "You guys are not supposed to run out of beer." And now Bob's getting pissed off because I'm calling him out. And all the beer was kept in this bathtub. It's like no beer. Probably because I invited half my friends over for the party, but they weren't used to this. So Bob pulls out of his wallet. He goes, "Here's an American Express card with Jerry Garcia's name on it." He goes, "Use this and make sure we never run out of beer again. Use it for anything you want. They'll never know." And I said, "Okay." And I kept that card for more than I didn't leave till 1992. And I used that card, and it's hard if I was in there being a jerk or taking pictures or asking for autographs, I would have been out of there so fast. But I was just a regular guy who happened to talk backwards sometimes too. They like that. And and I just got along with all of them because I didn't treat them as rock stars. I treated them as regular guys. Plus maybe I had cocaine, and plus I had the ability to get to cocaine anywhere. I knew everybody. So 3:00 in the morning in Iowa, we're out of coke. I'll find it, or whatever else they wanted. So I was in charge of the hospitality suite. Never got paid, but I had a credit card, and I'd fly around and always, go into Grateful Dead hotels, and take, they'd take a helicopter here, helicopter there. I was always around. I was always had a fun time, and I've been to their houses, and Ukai and places like that. Very good friends with the drummer, and it went for a long, long time, and I had a great, great time, and never overstayed my welcome for the most part. I mean, sometimes, I was always on the soundboard at the shows, having this, drinking beer, having a great time. Never went on stage, stayed far away from the crew. Steve Parrish, Ramrod, they were working, and they didn't really see eye to eye because I'm getting the band high, and they're trying to work. So it was a friendly relationship with the crew, but I stayed out of their way. As long as I stayed off the stage.
Have you had any contact with any of the band members recently? Yeah.
Not recently. I know what they're doing. I talk to Billy Kreutzmann every now and then. I talk to Bobby every now and then, but nothing like it used to be.
Is there any chance they kind of get back together, or what's the deal with that?
Well, they are. I mean, they are together as they're going to be right now. Dead and Company is doing their thing. Phil Lesh and friends are doing their thing, and that is kind of what they're doing. I don't think Phil and Bobby get together every now and then shows, but I don't think they'll play Phil and Billy and Mickey and Bobby together again. I don't know that for a fact, but
it'd be really
I think
cool if they did.
Everyone's pretty happy and content doing what they're doing right now. They're all making copious amounts of money.
Are you a fan of the Wharf Rats?
Oh yes, absolutely. The Yellow Balloons. Love the Wharf Rats.
Okay.
I was never sober. I'd never seen the Grateful Dead sober, but I saw Dead and Company sober, and lots of fun. The things I forget. There's all sorts of things that people say, "Oh, Russ, remember this?" I'm like, I really don't. I remember Jennifer Aston saying, I think she says, "I don't remember any episodes of Friends," and I was like, I get that, because people are like, "Oh, you remember this, Russ?" I go, no. I mean, I kind of remember bits. I mean, one time The Clash, I got The Clash in the same hotel as the Dead. Great story. But, I remember bits and pieces of it and things like that. And other people remember everything. And it's like, how come I don't remember anything? No, alcohol. Alcohol and cocaine were, I missed a lot. And I'm saddened by that, how I don't remember a lot of things. But people, I know I was there. I had a good time.
I met the dude from oh my god, my mind just went blank. Filter. And the band Filter.
Okay.
And he sings that song, "Wake Up My Airplane, Wake Up My Airplane," right? And then it's the chorus of that song is let me clear my singing voice. La la la. Will you take my picture? 'Cause I won't remember. His name's Richard Patrick, and we hosted a concert in Chicago. Recovery Unplugged did a number of years ago, and it was for the band Garbage, which is that female band from Europe. Awesome. And it was Jam Alker and Richard Patrick from Filter. So I was kind of hanging with him, and I had no idea who this guy was. Okay. I'm side stage while they're warming up, and he asked me to take a selfie. He just looked like a normal dad. He looked like a dad. Okay. Probably late 50s, early 60s, around your age. And he's like, "Dude, you look like Adam Sandler. Can we take a picture together?" I'm like, okay. I had no idea who the guy was. And then 2 minutes later, he goes out to warm up, and I'm like, holy shit, that's Richard Patrick. But his whole saying is, "Can you take my picture? Because I won't remember." He talked about being on this airplane and being so trashed and that's how he lived his life. And people who struggle with alcohol, you live in a perpetual blackout for the most part. I look back at my time when I was away at the University of Florida. I don't remember the majority of my time there. And the only way I remember bits and pieces of it is from photos, actual pictures that were taken, because I literally walked, my time in Gainesville, which explains why I didn't finish there. So let's get to your bottom. Tell me how you got into recovery.
Well, it kind of started in '92, and I just didn't know it when I was leaving the Grateful Dead. When I went back to my hotel room and I just started crying, and I had no idea why. We're at the Four Seasons. I'm overlooking the Central Park, and all of a sudden I just start crying. I said, I can't do this anymore, and this is not for me. And I said, I got to get out of here. I was losing about 10 friends a year, overdosing to heroin, and I said, I got to stop this. And so I went back to Boston, and my drug problem got exponentially way worse. I don't want to compare it to First Responder, but the Grateful Dead were everything in my life, and all of a sudden I had nothing, and I didn't know who I was anymore. And so and I decided I made one of the great alcoholic decisions of my life. I had a bunch of money, and I knew somebody that was selling their liquor store. And so I bought a really big liquor store in Kingston, Massachusetts, on the way to Cape Cod. Have no idea how to run a business, and I ran a liquor store and managed to lose a lot of money. And there's a long story with that, and I ended up getting arrested for multiple DUIs, many ankle bracelets, many trips to jails. And in '98, I went back to Boston. I went back to Boston because I had to get out of. I went back to Florida to see my mom and my stepfather. I had to get out of Boston. I was going to go to jail in South Bay, and it was bad jail. I did not want to go there, so I guess, like plenty of people, I said, well, I was going to fail a drug test, so I just zipped to Florida. Went to Boca, lived at my mom's house, and ended up getting sober finally in 2004. After a few more DUIs and another trip to federal prison. But in 2004, when I got out of federal prison, my parole officer, my probation officer, was in the rooms, and he made me go to AA. Now, I've been to AA a bunch of times, and I had to write down the piece of paper of the chairperson, but I just, I just wrote it myself. I never went to the meeting. But finally, he forced me to go, and I went, and I kind of, it was okay. I knew I had to do it. I went to Crossroads and listened to people, and all I really wanted to do was I just wanted to get my license back. But I was told, you'll never get it back. You'll never get a license back. And another thing I was afraid of is always afraid of being bored. I always needed something to go on. So I didn't have a truck anymore, but I still had my motorcycles. And I remember we had 5 hurricanes that year. So all of a sudden, Crossroads is closed. I have no way of getting around. And I'm in Boca, and there's nothing to do. There's no power. And so I said, well, let's read the big book. And I start going to the garage because it's cooler in there. There was no AC. Open the garage door, and I start reading the jaywalk. The guy keeps running in front of a bus, almost getting hit. He finally gets hit. I'm like, this is the stupidest story I've ever read in my entire life. Bill Wilson's an idiot. And I literally pick up the book and I throw it against the garage door. I have no license. My license is suspended the entire life, but I still have my motorcycles. Now we're about to get another hurricane. Gloria, I think, or Wilma is about to come with us. But I say, let me just take my motorcycle out of the garage, do a quick couple laps around Boca, just to get it out of my system. I start backing out my bike, and all of a sudden the tears start pouring down. And I realized that I'm the jaywalker. I'm the idiot. I'm the guy. And I'm doing this clean, sober. No drugs are in my system. No alcohol's in my system. I'm making the stupidest decisions sober. And I realized, oh my God, it's not the beer. It's me. It's the smartest guy in the room doing the stupidest things in the room again. I parked the bike and I said, I am never going to get this if I keep breaking the law. I get a sponsor. I start going to the rooms. I totally surrender. That was my moment of surrender. The most important day of my life. And that's how I said, and then of course years later, 2010, I ended up getting my license back, through the promises, that I ended up, that same probation officer makes me go to another DUI class because I got another DUI, years ago. and I had to take care of it. I ended up going to Tallahassee to go to the license board to see if I could get my license back. The same woman who says, you'll never get a license back, looks at me and says, oh, Mr. Levine, you have 2 DUIs. I have 5. I said, yes, I have 2 DUIs. She said, you just have to blow and hum into this machine for a year, you'll get your license back. I went back and told my sponsor, I said, no, I think I lied. I told him the story. He goes, well, you didn't lie, you do have 2 DUIs. You have 5, but you have 2 also. And it's called sobriety, not stupidity. Ended up getting my license back, and I realized if you just do the right thing in baby steps, it's not going to happen overnight. I wanted my license overnight. I lost my license in 1981. All I had to do was stop driving for 30 days. 30 days. Day 28, I got arrested again because I couldn't stop driving. I don't like being told what to do. AA has taught me to listen to others, not to listen to myself. First thought wrong. So now, to this day, I don't trust myself. I'm better, but I still have these decision-making processes that they're not all there. Even though I have 17 years sober, so I run them by my sponsor. I still make financial decisions that are probably not so great, but it's worked out now. Thanks to my fiance.
Let's clear something up.
Yep.
So for the last 17 years, you have not had a single DUI, and
Correct.
you have not bought a liquor store.
I have not bought a liquor store. I haven't been arrested.
You haven't been arrested. When you were in federal prison, how long were you in prison for?
I was in federal prison for almost 2 years.
Okay. And did you use while you were in prison?
I did not. I was too scared. I figured I'm going to go there. One time somebody gave me a joint, and I got nervous, and I threw it out. And I had to pay for that dearly.
Why didn't you sell it?
I did not want to. I didn't go to jail to get in trouble. But also, I never went to AA meetings there. They had them, and I didn't do it. And of course, when I got out, I got another DUI because I was just another decision. I'm just going to drink at home. Here's an idea. If you just drink at home, you'll never get a DUI. But what happens after you have 1 or 2 beers?
You
get
leave.
Great ideas. Your frontal lobe says, Russell, do this, do that, do this. And so then I would start taking my motorcycle. I'll go to Boca. I'll go to the Boca Bar and Grill. Nice dive. It's not there anymore. Have a couple beers and I'll go home. But then you're there and you don't see the girl you want to see, the girl of your dreams is not there. So then you go to Del Rey, to O'Connor's Pub. And then you go here. Then you go to Lake Worth. You go to Sneakers or the Owl. And you start doing this little thing. And eventually on January 2nd, 2005, because you never drink on New Year's Day, because that's for amateurs. I'm too smart for that. I'm coming back from O'Connor's Pub at 2 o'clock in the morning, where I was told, don't go home, Russ. I'm hammered. Fall off my motorcycle, piss in my pants, break my foot. Delray police come and get me. Another DUI. I'm going to be heading back to Yazoo City, Mississippi. Back to federal prison. Probation officer gives me a chance, makes me go to meetings. I turn my whole life around.
Unreal. Yeah. I mean, listen, this is, and I say this with all seriousness, and I know we like to joke a lot on the show. This is a motherfucker of a disease. Okay. I think that's a pretty good synopsis. And, although you hear people say, well, you have a choice, when you're in the throes of your disease, there really isn't a choice. Okay. If you're dope sick and you've been strung out on heroin, for months and months, and you just ran out and you're 10 hours into not using and you're shaking and you're nauseous and you're sweating and lots of things are happening to your stomach. If I put a bag of dope in front of you, there's a 0% chance that you're not going to take it. Okay. That's the true essence of being powerless.
And you're also going to do things you would never, ever do. I mean, everyone loves their mother. Everyone loves their grandmother. You're going to rob them.
Oh yeah.
In a second, or anyone else. You'll just.
It turns you into a person that you never thought you'd be, going places you shouldn't have gone, with people you shouldn't have been with, doing things you shouldn't have done. And that's the reality of it. The good news is that once you surrender and once you have some time under your belt, right, we are moved from a state of being powerless to a state of being empowered. And I think that's important to say because I've heard it early on in meetings. Oh, I had a week clean. I just picked up a white chip. I'm an addict. That's what I do, right? That doesn't fly. What flies is I had a week clean and I made a choice to pick up and use. It didn't just happen, right? And what we learn in recovery, once we become empowered, at that point, when we're not caught in the grips anymore, we are no longer powerless. We are empowered to make choices.
Yes.
And we can make whatever choices we want, followed by whatever actions we want in recovery, as long as we are willing to deal with the consequences. And my story was, I wanted the consequences to stop. It wasn't that I didn't like getting high anymore, right? That's not a reality. Coming into treatment, coming into recovery, going to meetings isn't about brainwashing us that we don't like the feeling of escape. It's understanding that with the genetic makeup that we have, that, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that we don't have that ability to live a successful life trying to moderate our use of substances. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Because every time I picked up, my life would fall apart. There was a direct, not even, you can't say it any more than direct, a direct correlation between substances in my life and consequences.
Every time.
And magically, when the substances were removed, those consequences stopped.
Mhm.
And over time of no longer having those consequences, only then, and I emphasize the word over time because it doesn't happen overnight, but over time, my life got better. But I know many people who don't stay stopped long enough to experience the actual joy of why we stop. And that's the kicker.
Yeah, the
Right?
magical thinking. Oh,
It's
this won't happen again. I know exactly what to do. If I hear another person in treatment say, I know exactly what I need to do, I just need to do it, I'm going to kill it. They're going to kill themselves. It just doesn't, they just don't do it. That's the problem.
it's
They
very
think it's not going
frustrating.
to happen again.
It's very frustrating. It's frustrating because you have been there, you have lived it, you have experienced it, and you know how the story ends. But people insist that the story doesn't end that way and they're going to write their own book.
Mhm.
You
They're
understand?
unique, they're special, and it's very sad. And the ending is never good, every
Yeah.
time.
So where we're powerless in recovery is over others. And that's and pardon the pun, but that's a tough pill to swallow, right? Because if you could instill what you feel with 17 years sober and put it in a person who has 3 days sober, that would be enticing enough for them to take on this challenge of living life in recovery. However, we are hard-headed. We are hard-headed individuals that are unique and feel like we can just manage. And if we could just control, right? Listen, my mother, I think I've seen drunk maybe twice in my life. She is the epitome of what we would call a normie. Okay. So if we were at a event, a party, a wedding, a bar mitzvah, whatever the case was, and I see my mother with a glass of wine and I say, "Hey mom, what are you doing?" "Nothing, just having a glass of wine." That would be her response, right? But if you put an alcoholic at that same party and you say, "Hey, Russell, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just having a glass of wine. It's only wine. Don't worry about it. I can control it." If you don't have a problem with something, there is no need to control it, right? So that is And for the viewers and people who are listening right now, that's a key to maybe there's an issue, right? Like I don't have a shopping addiction, okay? So if my kids see me on Amazon ordering something, they're not going to say to me, "Dad, are you sure you should be doing that?" And my response isn't going to be, "Well, it's only $7.99 and it's Prime, so I don't have to pay for shipping." I'm going to be like, "Am I sure I'm supposed to not be doing what?" Right? I'm just ordering something on Amazon, right? There's a complete and total disconnect between the people who are defensive, right? What does the word denial stand for? Do you know this one?
What is the word denial for?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a couple of them. I mean, the river and
No. Don't even notice I am lying.
oh yeah, okay, yeah,
All right. You like that?
yeah,
So
that's
don't
good.
even
Didn't
notice I'm
even
lying.
notice. Yeah,
When we're in denial,
absolutely.
we believe our own bullshit.
All the time.
Yeah. So listen, we can go down a rabbit hole here. I want to get back to you. You find recovery. You finally surrender. You start going to AA meetings. When did you start working in the field?
I
When did
started
you
working in the
decide?
field in 2006. I
Okay.
was a behavioral health tech at Watershed, where I learned how not to treat employees, because
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. But they trained you well, and I was an overnight tech, and it was what it was. And I stayed there for 2 years in my pink blouse. And but luckily, I was in the Boca office where I met. There was actually some very good clinicians there, and there was some actually very good people I met in the Boca office. And it was actually a fairly pleasant experience as opposed to working in Boynton. And
Listen,
then,
there have been some success stories out of the Watershed. One of my best friends in the world, Josh Fenster,
yes,
who's been a previous guest on the Rhyme and Reason podcast, the owner of Seacrest Recovery Center, is a graduate of the Watershed, and he's been clean for or he's sober, for I think he's coming up on like 15 years, something like that. He's going to yell at me if I got this wrong, but whatever.
he deserves to. And then I went over to B-Hop as a case manager for 5 years. One of my home group guys in my home group, Matt, may rest in peace, was the clinical director at the cottages. And I had such a great experience with Don Delaney and the crew at the cottages at B-Hop for 5 years. I met so many people there. And that was really the beginning of my joy of working in treatment. And then I was director of operations at a place in Pompano. And then they made the decision that I'd be a great marketer. And this was right during the time where people were all of a sudden getting arrested for marketing. I was like, is this the greatest,
It's like 2014, 2015,
yeah,
2016.
I was like, I don't know, maybe 12. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be the greatest thing for me, but it worked out. It worked out. And I was actually knew a lot of people, did it the right way because I met people. I went to conferences and I met people that have been doing it for years. And I met, the OGs, Walt Quinn, Bill Lane, David Cunningham, people that have been doing this forever. And, Bob Lehman, I met yourself, and guys that are just, above board. It just taught me what I need to do. And then I've been working, and now I'm at Archstone Behavioral Health the last 2.5 years. And it's a wonderful experience. It's a nice, small family run treatment center, and, it's small, everything is self-contained. It's a wonderful place to recover.
Tell me a little bit more about Archstone. I know I've worked with you in the past. What you guys offer, what levels of care, insurances that you accept, things like that, so our listeners can hear about that.
Love to. We're a detox. We have a small detox facility, male and female, right on campus. And one of the great things that I love about Archstone is it's all self-contained. You don't have to take a van ride 45 minutes to Boca to go to a mansion, and back every day. You're in group all day. You don't have to go in a hot van and drive back. It's all right here. So we have detox, male and female detox, separate on the same campus, residential and PHP. We also have a kosher program. We have a program for pregnant females. We also have a program where we do a lot of testing and diagnostic.
A lot of
testing.
what?
Diagnostic testing.
Okay, I thought you said you had a program where you do a lot of texting.
Texting, yeah. Well, there's actually, we do have a program for phone addiction. No, we don't, but it's incorporated. And believe me, I need that. If anyone needs a course, a treatment.
Let me
for
tell you
phone
something.
addiction, it could be me.
I relate. I'm going to be vulnerable here for a second and tell you that Wednesdays from 12 noon until 1 p.m., even though I love this podcast and I feel like we're helping people and I wouldn't trade it in, it is the most stressful hour of the week for me. Not because I don't know how to conversate or because I'm nervous. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. And so for an hour, for the most part, I don't check it. And it's like, I want to check it. I want to know.
FOMO, fear of missing out.
I want to check it. I'll be honest.
Of course.
But it's on Do Not Disturb, which then puts my computer. I have this little fancy MacBook Pro here that somehow is connected to my phone. I don't know how technology works. But when I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, it also puts my computer on Do Not Disturb. So I don't even get the alerts on here either. So I'm in a black hole for an hour. I don't think I can handle treatment.
Yeah, no, it's good for us. Yes, we have a complete self-pay diagnostic program. That's wonderful. That's great for a lot of failure to launch people. And you'll see the psychiatrist every day, the doctors every day, psychologists, psychiatrists. You'll live right here on the property. You'll go to groups. And we've been
what
Archstone
insurances
around
do you guys
since 2001. We are in net with pretty much every insurance except Blue Cross and United. So all the HMOs will take the Cigna Connects, the Aetnas, the Humanas. We'll take the Bright Health, the Ambetters. We will take for detox resident PHP.
Okay, and we're in with the old Florida Blue.
Yep, absolutely.
So
that's why we work so well together.
We do work well together.
Yes.
All right. So daily and long-term tips for maintaining recovery. And I'm gonna put this out there that your career or my career does not equal recovery, and I think that's important to say because there's a lot of young bucks who have 6 months, a year clean that really want to work in treatment, and I don't blame them. Right? It's a really awesome job. You get to help others. You're working in your realm. You have your experience, strength, and hope to share. Right? The majority of people you're working with are also in recovery. How do we not substitute our work for our recovery?
You can't, well, by going to meetings, you'll hear stories. If God forbid, if you still go to meetings, because I know a lot of people think, I work in treatment now, I don't have to go to meetings. You'll find out that it doesn't work. Going to the gym 4 times a day does not equal a meeting. It's always good to go to a gym. I certainly recommend it. I know I could probably use it, but it just working. And I find I need more meetings working in treatment than I did ever before. I'm working with alcoholics every day. And a lot, to get home, the easiest thing to do is the last thing I want to do is go to a meeting and talk to another alcoholic. I've been talking to families all day. I've been talking to clients all day. I'm sick of alcoholics. But that was work. This is real life. There's the exit sign. And I need to go to meetings just for my own personal, it's self-care. You need the self-care. If you're in any business, but especially in behavioral health, you need to take care of yourself. Or
and self-care,
you're not good.
I'm glad you brought up self-care. I remember, I got clean when I was 20 years old. And my biggest fear surrendering and going into treatment, and that's just my story, I went into treatment, but getting clean was I will no longer have fun, that I will not be fulfilled, my life won't be fulfilling, what in the F am I going to be doing with myself? How am I going to do this? All the gamut of tapes were playing in my head. I was dead wrong, right? Russell, how do you spend your time? What fulfills you? What do you do for fun? How do you keep things interesting? And this is not a PG show, so you could share it all. All right. What do you do?
Number one, as always, number one is family. Because of recovery, because I now have a wonderful fiance, two great kids, Tatum and Eliza, and we have a wonderful house because of the joy, because of the promises. I have a wonderful house in Jupiter Farms with a big porch and a yard and dogs and cats and guinea pigs. And I sit on my porch on my rocking chair and I just look out over land and I'm like, wow, this is mine. This is ours. This is so peaceful. This is so wonderful. Look, I did this. I've accomplished this. I've made my mother proud. And because I have my license back, I get on my motorcycles, and I ride around, and I have a great time when I go on vacations. When I go on vacations with the family, and I take the bike out. I go to meetings at night on the bike, and I do photography. We have, because of I got sober, and my sponsor told me this years ago. God wants everyone to make lots of money. God wants you to be happy. He just doesn't tell you how you're going to do it. And through my sobriety, I picked up photography and was teaching photography for years. I've had lots of students that are now pretty famous photographers, and they're in galleries, and they do studio work, and they started working for the PGA, and taking pictures professionally. And through sobriety, I never knew what talents I had. But once you get sober, the fun. I've probably been told to quiet down in restaurants more times now, sober, than ever drunk. We're a pain in the ass. We laugh, we joke. People are like, "Oh, can you calm down?" I go, "Well, no, we're having fun. None of us are drinking, and we're laughing and joking and having a great time." And the conventions you go to are just so much fun. The AA picnics, you're like, "Oh, this is going to be so boring." Going to music events, going to concerts, where you actually remember what they played. You actually go, hey, these guys are really good musicians. I remember. You go home and you remember things. You watch a TV show and you remember stuff. It's amazing. You remember having sex. You remember who you slept with, even though it's only one person now. It's good. It's good stuff. It's good. It's good stuff.
Speaking of that one person, I feel like you've been calling her a fiance.
Yes.
For a while now. When do you tie the knot?
Probably December.
What's with the problem?
Nikki works for Therapeutic Oasis in Boca, and the love of
what is that?
Therapeutic Oasis is a large practice, psychology practice in Boca. I'm surprised you haven't been marketing to them there. They're very good.
Obviously, all her referrals are going to Archstone.
So. Not really. They're very diverse.
It sounds like a spa, the Therapeutic Oasis.
It's very healing. It's very healing.
Sounds like it. All right. So December is going to be the wedding?
December is going to be the wedding. I'll make sure you're there. But probably actually, we're joking. We're going to have it at a Chinese restaurant in Miami.
I think that's perfect.
We're probably going to have it at a house. We have a house. The porch is built for it. The house is built for a nice wedding.
Yeah, if I ever get married again, which is highly doubtful, it will be a very, very small affair because it literally goes by so fast. That whole night, and that's not a knock on anybody who wants these lavish weddings. That's an outside issue. We're not going to discuss that, but we are running up against the clock here, Russell, and I hope you take this to heart. I think you are literally one of the most genuine people I've ever encountered. You have a heart of gold. I feel like everything that you've been through that has led you to this point has put you in a prime position that enables you to help countless individuals, not just every year, but on a daily basis. And I'm speaking from somebody who's known you for a lot of years, and we live semi-parallel lives when it comes to the way we operate and the way we try to help others. There is nothing more fulfilling than helping somebody else. right? So if we can leave the audience and the viewers and the listeners with anything, that if you want to feel better today, go and help somebody else today, right? And I'm not sure if you agree with that, but
Amen.
yeah. So anything
If
you
you're
want
in a
to,
funk, if you wake up in a funk and you don't know what to do, help another person. It doesn't have to be an alcoholic. Everyone's like, oh, I have to help an alcoholic. Help anyone. I mean, you go on Facebook, this and this. I got the Jupiter Farms resident page, and all of a sudden someone says, "Oh, this person needs a pickup truck, to move some stuff here for there. They're old." I'm like, "Sure, what the heck?" I mean, just help somebody. It makes you feel so good.
it does. It does. Well, I just want to thank you again, Russell. I'm sure I'll see you. I'm not a huge networking event guy, but of the 2 or 3 things that I go to a year, I see you at every one of them, even ones that I don't expect to see you at. I spoke at that EAP event for American Airlines the day before, and then the next day was kind of the exhibit hall for their employees. And I'm sitting at our booth, and all of a sudden, Russell Levine walks in Miami, and that was a tough event to get into for the parking. Okay,
Yeah, who has a conference at the airport in Miami?
I don't want to talk about it. I love American
Yeah,
Airlines deeply, but I don't want to. It's already on my resentment list. Anyways, Russell,
yeah.
thank you so much for joining Rhyme and Reason with Dr. Barry. Episode number 15 is in the books, and I hope you've now become a fan of the show and you'll continue to support this podcast. For your info and for the audience's info, this episode should be up tomorrow on Spotify. It's usually delayed by 1 day. So you'll have, and if you want to play it for anybody else, you got it there.
Fantastic. What a great program. Thank you for all you do, Dr. Barry.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.